Hello, thank you for choosing to attend this research session. My name is Lyndie Kelley, and I'm excited to share with you my research on powering play and examination of the relationship between vitamin D status and physical limitation experience and play-based motor patterns. So, on our research radar today, I am from the University of New England, and our mascot are the Nor'easters, so forgive the puns on weather. There will be several today. It's always good to know what's coming up throughout the presentation. We'll discuss first and foremost my interest in the topic and how I arrived here today to be able to speak with you. We'll lay out the research question and the introduction and background on the topic. We'll discuss learning objective and then go through the research design and methodology and discuss the results and conclusion. And finally, really take a look at the relevance and importance, as well as some future research ideas and options surrounding this topic. So, as I mentioned, I am a graduate student at the University of New England. I'm also earned my bachelor's from UNE in 2011 in applied exercise science. Decided to become a double graduate. I will graduate this May. I'm also the coordinator of strength and conditioning at the University of New England. I work with all 18 of our varsity athletics teams as well as our 21 club sports. So I'm in charge of about 1,000 student athletes. It keeps me very busy, but I love what I do. I also have the opportunity to be an adjunct faculty and laboratory instructor in the Department of Exercise and Sport Performance. And additionally, I'm the Northeast Regional Coordinator for the National Strength and Conditioning Association. It's a volunteer role that I really relish, and it helps me stay in touch with all kinds of professionals related to fitness, but also has helped me branch out into other realms such as nutrition and really take a deep dive into how we can work interprofessionally to enhance our two professions. But most importantly, I'm a mother of two young boys, an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, pictured here, and you'll see them throughout the presentation, but that is my main focus and research for this presentation is helping them and their generation really enhance their quality of life overall. And I wanted to include my contact information. Should you have any further questions, I would be happy to discuss them with you via email, or you could reach out to me on Instagram or give me a call. So our research question today is there a relationship between vitamin D blood serum status and the occurrence of physical limitation in crawl, walk, run, and play motor patterns of children and adolescents aged 5 to 19 years? As this sweet little video shows, play is just such a joyous thing, and it's very important in our overall development, which we will discuss a bit further here in a moment. But really, in laying out this question, I was specifically interested in looking at children and then understanding how play and the motor patterns within our playful moments could be impacted by nutrition. So the learning objective is to assess the relationship between vitamin D status and those who experience physical limitation while running, walking, crawling, or playing. So this quick video here, a good sprint is always fun to watch kiddos move. And every kid has a different movement pattern, just as they have different nutritional needs and different nutritional statuses. But as we understand more and more about their needs, we can really make a bigger impact in how they grow, mature, and then hopefully how they develop long term. So a bit more of an introduction and background into how vitamin D and play work together here. Vitamin D is known to impact musculoskeletal and neuromuscular health in a plethora of ways. I don't know if there really isn't a bodily system that isn't impacted, if you will, by vitamin D, especially when it comes to movement and athleticism, hand-eye coordination, mood, so many different things. And a deficiency in this micronutrient can really be detrimental to healthy motor skill development, which again is our focus today. And physical limitations due to pain or discomfort can decrease a child's interest in being active. And if we lose interest in being physically active when we know I have so many other things competing for a child's attention today, such as video games, TV, more screen time than ever, that can be a real challenge in helping them maintain a healthy body weight, as well as develop those motor skills. In childhood, it's a critical time to develop those fundamental movement skills, such as crawling, walking, running, additionally throwing, grasping, catching, jumping, landing. Again, the list is long and varied there, but the ability to play freely is an important aspect of motor development and skill acquisition, and that right there is the crux of it. And it really helped lead me to this research question and why I wanted to assess it. So in terms of the design and methodology here, this funnel is an apt little analogy. I utilized NHANES data sets, and in this whole presentation and research project, by the way, is a secondary data analysis. So I picked two different data sets. PFQ020 is crawl, walk, run, play. And then I also looked at vitamin D, and they're both from 2011-2012. Those designations for PFQ020 also breaks down a bit further. So anyone who was 5 to 15 years old, they designated with crawl, run, walk, and play. However, if they were 16 to 19 years old, they looked at run, walk. So they kind of took the play out of the equation, which I understand why, because obviously people are maturing at that age and turning into adulthood, certainly becoming young adults. But I wish that play was something that was more socially acceptable, because we know it's so important. And in fact, with my student athletes at UNE, we play often and on purpose. It's a really important part of us, our schema as humans, if you will. The NHANES survey question was, do you have an impairment or health problem that limits your ability to walk, run, play, crawl, etc.? And that survey went out to a population of 2,242 individuals. They were all 5 to 19 years of age, and both male and female. And then what I ended up doing was splitting out their physical limitations, or splitting out the group, by physical limitations. So only 97 of those individuals reported some sort of physical limitation. However, the data sets do not tell us what the physical limitations were. And I find that to be a bit of a challenge as I designed this study. Specifically as a fitness professional, it's helpful for me to understand the indications and contraindications of injury and movement. Although I don't have that information, I at least know that 97 said yes to having physical limitations and 2,145 said no. And then what I did was look at the vitamin D blood serum status, and I split those into two groups. So I split them into a sufficient group and an insufficient group. And when looking at the research, 75 nmol per liter tends to be the really agreed upon level for whether you're sufficient or insufficient. So greater than 75 would mean that we're sufficient, and then less than 75 would mean that we are insufficient in some capacity. So then all of that data was analyzed in Stata software. I utilized an unpaired t-test and a chi-square test. So the unpaired t-test looked at the vitamin D blood serum status and compared it with those who said yes. And then the chi-square further broke that down for us so we could see the correlation between them. So in terms of results, when we funneled all that down, we did find that there was no statistical significance between the two groups with the t-test, with a p-value of 0.05729, and the statistical significance was set at 0.05. So unfortunately, we didn't find statistical significance, but I still think this study has some really great merit to it. We did find a weak correlation between those answering yes and those with vitamin D insufficiency, so less than 75 nmol per liter, with a Pearson's correlation with 1 degree of freedom. It was 0.0066, but ultimately we failed to reject the null hypothesis. So this box plot over here on the right, the first column is looking at those who said yes to having a physical limitation. The second is looking at those who said no. And you can see there really isn't much of a difference between the two. Most of the individuals fell anywhere between 48 or 50 and 75 or 80 with their blood serum status and mole per liter. So they're all in a decently healthy range, which is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but we certainly didn't see, minus those few outliers you see on the graph, too much of a difference there. But again, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe our vitamin D levels are in a great place. So in conclusion, the study does not suggest that vitamin D insufficiency impacts play-based movement in individuals aged 5 to 19 years. So here you see this is my little guy, my 8-year-old, playing soccer in a full sprint. We don't know if, we're dealing with any sort of physical limitation based on this study, but we do know that pain is felt differently by everybody. It's very subjective and individual. So what may be termed a physical limitation or pain or dysfunction by one individual may be different by another individual. And so that leads us into that discussion point that children and adolescents may not interpret their physical limitations the same way as adults, but they also, as I just mentioned, may not even interpret them the same way between each other. So in the future, looking at something of this sort, we might want to dig a bit deeper with some qualitative research to try to understand the actual quality of what they're experiencing and understanding what those physical limitations are. And the future studies are definitely needed to explore vitamin D status and physical activity in youth, because again, it just touches on so many different physiological systems within the body as a micronutrient. And children and adolescents may not even possess the knowledge or knowledge of benefits or even the sources of vitamin D. They're so important for physical activity and health. Off to the right here, you see a picture of cheese sticks and chocolate milk. And those are both great sources. Dairy tends to be a good source and one of the biggest ones for children, specifically of vitamin D. But it can be a trickier micronutrient for children to get, just because it usually comes in fatty fish or in milk or cheese, mushrooms, but some things on that list that children generally aren't big fans of. But the number one way that we synthesize vitamin D is through biosynthesis of our skin and absorbing that ultraviolet radiation. And especially here in the Northeast, we don't get enough of it year-round to make the amounts that we need without supporting it in our diet as well. So again, there's lots of little things there to tease out that we could explore further with qualitative research. But ultimately, understanding how to best support children and adolescents with their nutrition and enjoyable, and that's underlined and italicized for a reason, enjoyable physical activity is critically important for their long-term health and development. We want to make sure that we are hitting the mark nutritionally, but ensuring that they are able to enjoy the physical activity that they like most, whether that be sport or spending time outdoors, yoga. There are many different ways for them to be active, but we don't want them to hurt or avoid it because of pain or issues with nutrition. So again, this research had some real merit, and I'm excited to dig into it further. These are my references, and I have a more extensive list too if anybody would like to hear about them. And I just want to note as well that the children pictured throughout the presentation have University of New England photography releases on file per university policy, and their likeness was included on both the poster and the presentation with parental approval. So thank you so much for your time today and listening to my presentation, and I would gladly take any questions that you have and answer them to the best of my abilities. Thank you.